the meeting, please.
Good morning. The Joint Select Committee on Redistricting will come to order. The Chair is pleased to welcome the members, the guests that are here. The Chair appreciates the assistance of our Sergeant at Arms in preparing and maintaining this meeting. From the House, Reggie Seals, Warren Hawkins, Ray Cook, Dean Marshman. From the Senate, Hal Roach, Linda Matthews, John Enlow, and Terry Edmondson. The Chair is also pleased to welcome our court reporter today, Robbie Worley. The Chair thanks the Central staff for their effort in preparing for today's meeting. The purpose of today's meeting will be to discuss criteria to remedy the ruling of the Covington Court that was issued to us in an order on July 31st of this year. Today's meeting will proceed as follows. There's going to be a presentation regarding the county groupings. We are then going to receive input from other members of the committee on criteria that should be considered. And at that point, we're going to move to a time to receive input from the public. The public will be asked to make their remarks in a 2-minute time frame. The Chair would point out that there was an advanced sign-up outside. The Chair has directed that that sign-up remain open for at least another 30 minutes in case some people have not yet arrived. The Chair would point out that we have also opened up committee room 544 in this building. This meeting is not only being live streamed online, it is being broadcast in that room as well. If there are people in room 544, we welcome them, and we will, if they are signed up to speak, we'll be calling their names so that they do not miss their opportunity to speak. This time, the Chair is going to yield the chair to Chairman Dollar.
Thank you, Chairman Lewis. And we also remind you, maybe a little bit unlike our normal meetings, if you seek recognition for a question or a comment as a member, you need to identify yourself for the court reporter for the record. That's being taken. So the gentleman from Harnett County is recognized for his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm David Lewis, the Senior Chair of the House Redistricting Committee. I'd like to talk with the members and our guests here today about the various criteria that will be considered. The primary purpose of my presentation is to talk about 2 of the criteria that we know that we will need to operate under. The first one we discussed last week is the one person, one vote requirement. And for your records, in the House of 120 members, the ideal population based on the 2010 census is 79,462 people. For the Senate, under the 2010 population, the ideal population is 190,710 people. There is a plus or minus 5% variance that can be applied to these figures. My presentation is going to focus now on county groupings. All of you were distributed last week a map that is labeled 2010 census population by county. It looks like this. This shows the 2010 census population for North Carolina's 100 counties. I'd like to talk about the Stevenson rule that will be applied in the drawing of these maps. First of all, Groupings of counties, which we'll discuss in a moment, but groupings of counties must be filled with whole districts. Districts may not deviate in total population by more than plus or minus 5% from the ideal population. And districts within groupings must have the least possible number of crossings over adjacent county boundaries. Next slide, please. Groupings drawn under this rule are primarily generated using a mathematical formulaic process. Next slide, please. Here is how the grouping process develops using the 2010 census data for the county populations. Next slide. Members, the counties that you see here that are highlighted in purple are single county groups. That means that districts can be drawn within these counties, and districts must be drawn within these counties without including expansion into other counties. The purple indicates one county groups. Next slide, please. The red color that you see indicates two county groups. That means if you, in order to reach the ideal house population, you have to combine two counties in order to draw the districts. Next slide, please. The yellow or orange indicates three county groupings. Next slide, please. The bright yellow indicates a four county grouping under the Stevenson criteria. The green indicates a 5 county grouping under the Stevenson criteria. The dark green indicates a 6 county grouping. And finally, the blue color is a 7 county grouping in the middle of our state. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask that the House and Senate Sergeant at Arms distribute the exhibits that are labeled county groupings for 2017 House Plan and county groupings for 2017 Senate Plan to the members of the committee at this time.
The Sergeant at Arms will be directed to distribute the materials.
Members, the chair would, I would point out that the illustrations that we've shown are just for the House to show you how the counties are grouped in the House. The maps that are being distributed also show the county groupings for the Senate. We just did not place them in the PowerPoint presentation. Mr. Chairman, I believe there are extras. We have members that are here that may not be on the committee. If we started on, we get those to them as well. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'm continuing our remarks.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would point out that the county groupings that we have discussed is a mandatory requirement and is based on math. The maps that are presented to you are our best efforts to determine what the ideal county grouping should be. If there are alternative ways to exceed the county groupings that we have provided here, where more one counties are created, or more two counties, or more three counties, etc., I would ask that members please submit those so that they can be reviewed before and included in the discussion of our meeting on next Thursday. I would point out that the county grouping rule is the strongest constitutional requirement anywhere in the country. This guides us in being able to draw fair districts, and again, if members are able to determine a better county grouping that complies with the requirements, we look forward to reviewing that. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I request that the Sergeant at Arms distribute what is labeled Map 6. It reads, comparison of 2011 enacted to optimum House County maps, and also Map 3, which reads comparison of 2011 enacted to optimum Senate County groups.
The Sergeant at Arms will distribute the materials requested.
And Mr. Chairman, as before, the members that are present that are not on the committee, I will request that they receive these maps as well. And further, Mr. Chairman, if there are extra maps, once the members have received theirs, if we could make plans to distribute those to the members of the public who are here at the conclusion of the meeting.
So ordered.
Mr. Chairman, I believe most members have their maps now. May I continue my presentation?
Gentlemen, may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, the map that you have before you that is labeled Map 6, comparison of 2011 enacted to optimum House County groups, and Map 3, which reads comparison of 2011 enacted to optimum Senate County groupings. This comes from a public court filing that was made on October 31st of 2016. I would point out that the county groupings map that you just received, which showed what we believe to be the optimum county groupings, those groupings also appear on this map. The areas that are in green are county groups that are unaffected by the court ruling and will not require a remedy. In plainer speak, that means that the areas in green will not require a redraw of the districts. The area in yellow, these are unaffected county groupings, but districts within those groupings will require remedies. The areas in white are areas in which both the county grouping has changed and we require the districts to be modified with it. Mr. Chairman, I think at this time, only on my presentation, if there are questions on my presentation, I'd be glad to take them at this time.
Representative Michaud.
Yes, would you explain the numerical identification on these maps?
If you will hold for just a moment, Chairman Lewis. Representative Michaud, if you would identify yourself by name and county for the record.
Representative Michaud, Durham County.
Thank you.
Give us the definition of the numerical numbers on these maps.
Representative Michelle, thank you for that question. I should have pointed that out. Members, if you'll refer, just to make it easier, if you'll refer to the map that reads county groupings for 2017 House Plan, what Representative Michelle has asked, the county groupings have a code in them. The code contains 3 numbers. The first number is simply an identifier of the county group. What's more important and helps us do our jobs, the second number, for instance, let me use an example here. If you look in the eastern part of our state, the county grouping that includes Currituck, Dare, Hyde, and Pamlico, you'll see that the second number in there is 04. That means there are 4 counties in that grouping. The third number that is in that, 01, means that those 4 counties create 1 seat. So that means 4 counties, 1 seat. To go to the middle of our state, if you look at Wake County, which is one of the counties in purple, that's a 1 county group. You'll notice that the second number there is 01. That means it's a 1 county group. The third number is 11. That means that it creates 11 seats within that 1 county. The same is true on the Senate map.
Further members wishing to ask questions of Chairman Lewis at this time? Seeing none.
With that, Mr. Chairman, I will conclude my remarks, and I know that you will recognize members of the committee that wish to offer criteria to be considered.
Members, are there any members wishing recognition for the purpose of providing criteria to be considered in the drawing of the map? I don't see anyone wishing to be recognized at this time. Senator Smithing?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Senator Smithing from Senate District 3, 8 counties, Eastern North Carolina. I wish to submit criteria to be considered.
So, this lady you're submitting this written comment. Did you have copies, or did you want to add further explanation to this, or just what does the lady desire?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like for copies to be distributed.
Sergeant Arms have copies for distribution.
Mr. Chairman.
We'll have them made and distributed. Did you, Madam Senator, did you wish any comment at this time in addition to? Or?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members? Senator Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've already submitted some recommendations in writing, but I do have one additional recommendation I would like to speak to, and I will submit it in writing later if that's appropriate.
All right, and I didn't catch, I apologize for not hearing. If you would identify yourself for the record.
Sorry, Senator Clark, Senate District 21.
Gentlemen, proceed with his comment.
Okay, and this is essentially a process requirement or recommendation. Currently on the North Carolina General Assembly website, we have the ability to go and find out who represents me. What I asked the committee to do is make available to the citizens of North Carolina a capability, once we provide a map for them to review, a capability for them to go onto the website and see who would represent me under the new maps that are being proposed for enactment.
Noted. Thank you very much for the recommendation. Other members seeking recognition at this time? Representative Michelle.
Yeah, Representative Michelle from Durham again. This goes back to Representative Lewis's presentation, if you don't mind. Could you clear up just one or two other matters on the maps involving the county groupings? Actually, just one matter.
I'm glad you're yield, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Lewis, let me be clear, and so the committee will be clear in identify these code numbers in here. And I'm particularly interested in the second number and the third number. For instance, in Wake County, that's a one county grouping. You've got 11. That county is there are 11 representatives in that one county, coming out of that one county. You have not made any designations as to how those 11 are to be elected, have you yet?
Thank you for that question, Representative. No, we have made no designations for how those 11 seats would be designed, and we will not do so until after this committee adopts criteria next week.
And for the record, that's Representative Lewis responded. And Representative Michelle, you got a follow-up?
Yes. The other question is, for instance, in a two-county grouping, we're looking at each representative representing 79,400 some odd people. For example, in a two-county grouping, what are the mathematics in that? For instance, you got Durham and Chatham together. What are the mathematics in that two-county grouping to get to that 79,000 that the four representatives will represent? May I follow up? You understand it's easy to do it for one county group, but for a two county group, how many are coming out of one county, how many are coming out of another county?
Thank you for that question, Representative Michelle. Again, this is David Lewis from Harnett County. The question you asked is regarding the 2017 House Plan map that was passed out, I believe. There are 33,000, pardon me, there are 331,092 people that comprise the total population of those three counties that are linked there, Durham, Orange, and Chatham. If you divide that number by the number that you've already said, this 79,492, that would yield 4 seats. But beyond that, I'm not sure I understand your question.
Follow up.
Well, now you got me confused. Now you said the 3-county grouping. I'm looking at a 2-county grouping with Durham and Chatham, right, and not Orange.
Representative Michaud, thank you for correcting me, sir. I'm looking at the same map you are. I simply glanced down and didn't notice for the record, the county groupings are illustrated with a thick black line, and there is indeed a thick black line between Orange and Durham. I just simply didn't see it. Yes, this is a two-county grouping, as you pointed out, sir.
Then follow, Representative Michaud again,
Follow.
What I'm asking, for instance, taking that Durham Chatham group, you've got 4 representatives. Each representative is supposed to represent 79,430 some odd people. How did you mathematically come up with Durham? In other words, the total population between Durham County and Chatham County, does that exceed more than 4 times 79,000 or less than 4 times 79,000?
Well, thank you for your question. Again, this is David Lewis. The population of Durham in 2010 was 267,587. The population of Chatham in 2010 was 63,505. That totals up to 331,092. So if we divide that by the ideal population of 79,462, it equals 4.16, which would be within the plus or minus 5% range.
The gentleman continues to be recognized for his question.
Thank you, sir. Representative Michaud from Durham. The figure you just gave me, 331,092, is the total population for both counties. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
And if you've got 4 representatives representing that 331, doesn't that population come out to be somewhere around a little over 80-some thousand people, which may be outside the 5% deviation?
No, sir, because again, it's 331,092. The ideal, if this was a congressional draw and we were under absolute zero deviation rules, we would have to have every district the same size. But the Stevenson criteria has provided that there's a plus or minus 5%. And again, I'd be happy to go through the math on my phone here like I was trying to do, but what I have represented this map to be is what I believe to be the optimum county groupings for the House and the Senate. What I've asked the members to do is, if they find a more optimal map, to bring that map forward so that it can be reviewed.
And as further explanation, Representative Michaud and this is Chairman Dahl, our staff has handed me, and you might want to write these numbers down. The ideal population for 4 members, 4 House seats, would be 317,884. The range, however, which is what Chairman Lewis is discussing, the range for 4 members would be anywhere from 301,956 to 333,740. That would be the range for a 4-member grouping. Durham and Chatham together, as has been mentioned, that's 331,092. So that fits in that range.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Gentleman's recommends.
This is David Lewis. I'd like to point out to the members that the last time we met, we passed out a chart that's labeled 2010 district population ranges and county populations. We could certainly repass that out to the members, but it shows the plus or minus 5% that the chairman just referenced.
Senator Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Clark, Senate District 21. You indicated on map 3 and map 6 that the clusters shown in green did not require, there's no requirement to change them, nor is there a requirement to change the districts within them. Is it the position of the leadership of this committee and the leadership of the General Assembly that the districts within those particular clusters shall not be changed as a part of this process?
This is David Lewis, and the answer is yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Further questions from members of the joint committee? Or further offers of criteria from members of the committee at this time? Senator Special, Representative Special.
Yeah, not to mow me. Can we get a copy? I know you gave a copy last week of that numbers, but can we get that? And not every one of us have one last week.
Yes, we can get that, staff can get that for you. Representative Michelle.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get my mind clear. Representative Michelle Durham, Representative Lewis.
The gentleman may ask his question.
Representative, in response to Senator Clark's question, you might understand that these counties on this maximum house county group, the green counties, will not be affected by what you all are proposing to make changes with? Is that what I'm hearing?
Thank you for the question. Again, this is David Lewis. Let me try to explain it in a different way. We believe in the maps that were passed out that illustrate the optimum county groupings, the ones labeled county groupings for 2017 House Plan, and then county groupings for 2017 Senate Plan. We believe that these are the ideal county groupings. We believe that if the ideal county groupings match the county groupings that were used in 2011, that no change would be required within those counties.
Further questions at this time, or offers of criteria from the members? Thank you. Seeing none. The Sergeant Arms will pass out the sheet entitled IDS Policies 2017 Restricting Operations. This sheet here. Committee will be these for just a moment while the Sergeant Arms passes this out.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, before I recognize you, we have exhausted the additional time provided for the sign-up sheet for the public comments, and that list is now closed. Chairman Lewis is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not pertaining to the criteria, but we felt it important to discuss it with the committee. This is the policies developed by the central staff and our information services division that we propose would govern access and empower members of the General Assembly and also of the public that wish to directly participate in the drawing of districts to have access to the computers and the staff. In short explanation, I would offer that this is the same policy that we used in 2011 2016, and I believe the same policy that we used in 2011. If there are detailed questions on this, Mr. Chairman, I respectfully ask that they be directed to staff.
Any questions on these procedures? And please know, I mean, as you look over these, you can always call staff later and contact them with any additional clarification that you might need. Okay, seeing no questions on that.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. This is David Lewis again. Members, for full disclosure, the chairs are heading this as the direction that we have issued to staff. If there are concerns with it, please bring those to the chairs. But we did want to share this so that you would all have access and that members of the public would have access and be more enabled to utilize resources if they wish to directly participate in the drawing of districts.
Senator Smith Ingram.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As it relates to public access, when you provide the room for the general public that's here in Raleigh, are we going to be accommodating maybe some of those same opportunities when you go further east for those in the public who cannot drive to Raleigh?
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I appreciate the question. I also want to say that I appreciate your steadfast advocacy for the East. We have not in the past been able to provide actual physical resources off-site, and will not be able to provide it this time as well. I would point out that there are several free websites, if you will, that allow people to access and draw maps. And we will certainly, we did last time and will again receive and review those. So we will not be able to provide the actual physical resources off-site, but we will certainly review maps that the public may draw using software that they can access online.
Senator Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Clark, Senate District 21. My question regards potential staff support for the minority party with regard to providing a full-time, if you will, legislative analysis division individuals to support us in possibly the creation of our maps and the interpretation thereof and creation of data. And the reason I ask this is due to no fault of their own, they're put under significant time constraints, and often our attempts to avail ourselves of those services are not successful. So I was wondering if there's a possibility that we could get a dedicated resource for that particular purpose.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that question. It's simple. The chairs have actually discussed that. As you know, our central staff works very hard and work very hard to serve all of the members. We want very much to facilitate as much involvement and participation in the trying to reach an acceptable remedy for this court order. If the minority leaders in the House and Senate were to request that, I'm sure we could make that occur. We would ask the Legislative Services Officer to deal with that. I also would point out that the Speaker and the President Pro Tem have also made an offer to the respective caucus leaders in the House and the Senate if they wish to hire outside map drawing aid. That has been offered as well.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you. before we go to taking public comments and input on the criteria, are there any members wishing to make any further comments with regard or offer any criteria for the drawing at this time? Well, with that, seeing no hands, we will begin the public comment portion of our committee meeting today. As just to remind everyone, we will keep decorum. If you have signs, please do not display them in any way in which they would block the view of someone behind you. There will be a 2-minute time limit. Sergeant at Arms will keep that. We'll call out the first 5 individuals and then we'll call out 5 at a time. And if you would line up with the mic there in the back, and again, be sure to identify yourself for the record, because public records being kept of this. I would also remind members, this is not an interactive period of time. Questions will not be taken of members of the public. This is our opportunity to listen to what they have to say in their presentations. Representative Floyd.
How many public people do we have signed up so far?
To the chair's view, it appears we have about roughly between about 40 and 45 speakers.
Thank you.
We would also ask to be certain that any of the groups, if you are representing a group in particular, please identify that when you begin your comments. So at this time, we will call up to the mic in the back. The first 5, hold on just a moment. Representative Corbin.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Just rehash a bit. There was a document Senator Smith Ingram presented. Was it going to be copied and distributed?
Yes, sir.
And just making sure that's going to happen.
That will
A
happen.
reminder. Thank you.
Just to be clear with the Sergeant at Arms, if that item has been copied now, if you're ready, go ahead and distribute that. We'll distribute that before we recognize our first group of folks. Let me go ahead and call up the first group, and then we'll get this started once this sheet has been distributed to the members. Ira Botvinnik, Phyllis Demko, Steve Hall, Mike Jennings, and Dr. Heather Simon. If y'all will line up there, and I apologize if I mispronounced anyone's name.
Cameras can stand. What is your idea?
And if you'll hold for just one moment until the Sergeant at Arms is finished distributing their material. Also remind you in the back, you'll need to make sure that the green light is on, turn it on when you're ready. Okay, seeing the materials distributed, the gentleman, if you would identify yourself and your comments not to exceed 2 minutes. Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. I am a voter, always have voted. My name is Ira Bachmanek. I reside in Lake County. I am angry about legislative districts that gerrymander. I am pissed that my tax dollars are being wasted to defend concocted legislative districts. I want my vote to matter. I did not come here to criticize Republicans. The truth is, majority parties have gerrymandered. Gerrymandering is wrong, and it must stop now. Redistricting should foster, to the great extent possible, competition, so as to provide better government for all North Carolinians. The antitrust laws of Chapter 2075 of the General Statutes prohibits entering into non-competitive agreements, and this should be the guiding principle of your deliberations. In this state, we care so much about fairness and competition that General Statutes, Chapter 75, always award triple damages and attorney fees for businesses that engage in anti-competitive practices. And this state law subjects violators to imprisonment of up to 2 years. The business of government should be no different. If what I'm saying is too difficult for you to legislate, in that it is human nature to be self-protective, I request that you vote for House Bill 200 and Senate Bill 209 that establish a nonpartisan process for drawing legislative districts. In conclusion, when Benjamin Franklin left the Constitutional Convention that established our federal constitution, he was asked, Dr. Franklin, what type of government do we have? Benjamin Franklin replied, a republic if you can keep it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't allow clapping, sorry. We don't allow for a sword.
If members of the audience would refrain from public demonstrations. Next individual is recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes. If you'd identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is Phyllis Demko, and I'm from Cary. I realize this is not about congressional districts, but to make my point, I'm offering a quote. This is from the minutes of the Redistricting Committee for Congressional Districts, February 16, 2016. One of the members of the committee said as follows, I want to make clear that we are going to use political data in drawing this map. It is to gain partisan advantage. I want that criteria to be clearly stated and understood. He acknowledged that this would be a political gerrymander, and indeed, the adopted criteria expressly instructed the map makers to draw a new district map that would maintain partisan advantage. The data actually was only related to election results. Other than population, that was the only criterion used. This is blatant partisan gerrymandering. This is putting politics over the welfare of citizens of the state. We have seen the results of partisan gerrymandering in North Carolina as well as throughout the country. So whether partisan gerrymandering is legal per se, and that's an open question before the Supreme Court at this point, we as citizens of this democracy know for sure that it is wrong. I ask you therefore to adopt criteria that do not include addresses of candidates or incumbents, and that residents' voting histories not be considered. Thank you.
The next person will proceed. Identify yourself, and you're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Steve Hall. Thank you all for your service. You obviously have a very complex task before you with many competing voices and allegiances to consider. As someone who led numerous institutions that had such a challenge, I always advised myself in my quiet moments and other fellow leaders, what are your core principles? What is the guiding light that motivates you to do the work you do. And when I thought about this opportunity to address you this morning, what occurred to me as something, if I was sitting in your shoes, might sound something like this. To do my best to ensure that each and every North Carolina citizen has a voice that can be expressed with equal weight and potential impact. I suggest that isn't merely a mathematical idea. It's a bit more complex than that. And I would encourage you to embody those additional elements as we deliberate how to draw up your maps. Thank you.
Thank you. The next individual is recognized. Identify yourself, and you're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committees. My name is Mike Jennings. I've lived in Wake County in North Carolina for about 50 years now. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning, and I am speaking just for myself. Others are going to talk in more detail about criteria that are fair, transparent, and actively involve the public. I could talk in more detail about that, but I want to go, and I agree with those criteria, but I want to go further. Why those criteria are important to me. Before Congress adopted the Constitution, the Voting Rights Act, there was the Golden Rule. We were given the Golden Rule, excuse me. I believe the criteria that you will hear about this morning will create an open process and promote fairness in elections. I think that would be consistent with the Golden Rule. I know in the past others have drawn districts to favor them. I agree, and that was wrong. It's time to turn the corner. Let's do the right thing. Let's do it. Treat others as you would have them treat you. I encourage you to be allowed to be touched by the mere angels of your nature. To turn the other cheek to those who have used the redistricting process to their own advantage. And rise above partisanship as you draw new maps. It's the right thing to do. My children, my grandchildren are depending upon you to keep this a democracy that works for everybody. Remember, the Golden Rule says do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next 5 individuals past Ms. Simon at the moment is Richard Green, if you would line up, Trina Harrison, Pam Swinger, I'm not sure I got that name quite right, Jen Jones, and Paula Jennings. So if y'all would line up. And Ms. Simon, you're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
My name is Heather Simon. I'm from Cary, North Carolina, and I'm here representing myself today. I took time off work today to come comment because nonpartisan redistricting is fundamentally about preserving our democracy. The redistricting process is only happening today because the legislature failed to create legal and constitutional districts in the first place. The fact that you have again hired the same consultants to draw the that drew the current illegal maps is troubling. The legislative redistricting process must be carried out in a nonpartisan manner, ideally by an independent commission and with the opportunity for the public to comment on the final district maps. To guarantee that the process remains fair and unbiased, the legislature should exclude political information like voter registration data and past election results when drawing maps. Both Democrats and Republicans won statewide races in the last election, indicating that voters in North Carolina are fairly evenly split. In contrast, whenever elections are based on districts, the scale leaned very heavily towards Republicans, as demonstrated by veto proof majorities in both the State House and State Senate. Any process that is designed to favor some voices or opinions over others is fundamentally undemocratic and goes against the spirit of the North Carolina and U.S. constitutions, As legislatures, you took an oath to uphold both. Section 2 of Article 1 of the state constitution states, all political power is vested in and derived from the people. All government of right originates from the people, is founded upon their will only, and is instituted solely for the good of the whole. The current districts do not represent a government originating from the will of the people. If you believe in democracy, you have an obligation to design truly fair and representative districts when drawing new maps. Attempts at gerrymandering for the purpose of gaining political advantage are short-sighted and undermine the core democratic principles. The issues faced by the state will change and the demographics will change, but once lost, democracy is very hard to regain.
Next individual recognized is Mr. Green.
Yes.
For a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Richard Green, Wake County. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. I'm a small businessman. I closed my business to be here today. And what I've learned as being a small businessman is innovation and progress is dependent on competition and listening to what's going on around you. The business world is full of large, very powerful companies that failed, Kodak, Xerox, who failed to follow that lesson. The same is true in government. So I urge you to adopt a districting process that is nonpartisan in nature, that is based on geography, and doesn't deal with any demographic information of any measure. I believe this is critical to our legislative process. It is critical to the progress of our communities, and it is critical to our democracy. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you. Next individual is recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you. Members of the committee, members of the General Assembly. My name is Trina Harrison. I'm from Alamance County. Racially based districting is partisan districting. For too long, regardless of which party held power, has held power in Raleigh, the politicians have chosen their voters. It's time for we the voters to get back to being able to choose our representatives. That's all. Thank you.
Next lady is recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Pam Schwingle. I'm from Cedar Grove, Orange County, North Carolina. 30 years ago, I moved to North Carolina based on its reputation for fairness, balance, for progress, and its support of agriculture and education. I've lived both in southern Orange County, northern Orange County, and in Person County. And I've seen that wherever I vote, my vote really doesn't matter. I could stay home on election day, and incumbents would be voted in, and change would be difficult. Democrats would win in Orange, and Republicans would win in Person. This has only worsened since the 2011, since the last census and new maps were drawn. The result is that only a few people vote. It's very suppressive of the vote. And because of these gerrymandered districts, we now know why this happens, and it's called an efficiency gap. And it's something that I think should be included in the criteria for choosing these districts, because it really is a situation where the individual vote is undermined. The one person, one vote is undermined. So let's make districts that are competitive. It's been done before, it's been done in other states, and let's get candidates that can appeal to a broad range of people that can really start solving our problems. So I would recommend that we basically use criteria that does not set partisan targets, does not protect incumbents, does not exclude threats to incumbents, and use criteria that excludes data on party registration, on race and ethnicity, except where required by the Federal Voting Rights Act. And then when the maps are drawn, report to us the quantitative efficiency gap to see how far or how close we are to the one person, one gap rule. And please let us know at each step what you're doing, why you're doing it, and provide to us a log of all your actions. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Jones, recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. My name is Jen Jones. I live in the great county of Orange, but I grew up on a tobacco farm in the great county of Warren. And as my mother says, our family's been here since Jesus wept. I also, in the interest of full disclosure, work for Democracy North Carolina, which I hear has been fighting since Jesus wept for both parties not to gerrymander. So I am very unpopular with everyone in front of me. Despite that, I'm here for the former purpose, to speak as a North Carolinian about criteria that matter to me and my mama. I want fair maps, and I want them to be devoid of racial and partisan gerrymandering. I'd kind of like for them to abide by the principles of equal protection under the Constitution. And since we are a southern state, I would argue the most fabulous one, I would like the principles of the Voting Rights Act to be a part of that too. But most important to me as a communications person is having public input and transparent and informed public input. But just as leadership is confident in Thomas Hoffeller to redraw our maps, the same man who did so in 2011, I am confident that those maps have already been drawn, that our criteria for those maps is already set. And I would really appreciate, as a member of the public, to see those maps and to be able to provide informed public comment at the hearings you so graciously are providing later this month based on those maps. So I would ask, please, as a North Carolinian constituent and voter, show us the maps. And I promise you, as a North Carolinian, we will tell you exactly how we feel about them. Thank you so much.
The next, if Ms. Jennings, if you'll just hold for just a moment, the next 5 individuals, if you would line up, Lloyd Chambliss, William Smith, Janice Ramquist, Diana Wynn, and Janet Huey, I believe. Ms. Jennings, you're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you. Part of the Pledge of Allegiance with little thought for its deeper meaning. I come here today also as a granddaughter of a World War I veteran, the daughter of a beloved World War II veteran. These men suffered greatly over their years because of their service. I come here today as a mother and a grandmother. I come here today for the memory of what all of our ancestors stood for and what they went to war for. And for the legacy I wish to leave my children and grandchildren. Part of the liberty and justice for which I speak is dependent on transparency, where one vote counts more or does not count more than another, and when the result of an election is not a foregone conclusion. Transparency in the process of drawing impartial districts is the most important criteria for which I advocate today. Transparency. Complete transparency, such as can be found in live streaming of all hearings and meetings. I advocate on behalf of future generations and for the large table of democracy, which I hope they can all come to. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chambliss, you're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Lloyd Chambliss from Orange County. A recent study has found that the North Carolina redistricting process ranks among the worst in the world. Our democracy in North Carolina is right there with the worst democracies in the world. Our legislature does not represent us, represents the Mets, they do. The recent court finding was that our districts were not legal, in other words, did not represent the people of the state because of racial gerrymandering. Hopefully a up-and-coming Supreme Court decision will find that partisan gerrymandering is unconstitutional. That has yet to be seen. But here we are, we have an opportunity. We're looking forward to the census in 2020 where new maps will have to be drawn. Democrats could could be in charge then, so it's an opportunity when we don't know who's going to win to do something about it, to draw some fair maps, to make the process nonpartisan, to not allow looking at past election results or registration, to get it out of the hands of the legislature except for final approval. So let's take this opportunity to write the process. Let's redraw the maps. Why do you start with the same maps and say we don't have to redraw most of the districts? Let's start over. It's easy to draw maps. Just start ignoring all the political requirements that you put into it to sow gerrymandering. So let's make this a nonpartisan process, start over, and do it right. Thanks.
Mr. Smith, you're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
William Smith, Raleigh, North Carolina. As a veteran and someone who has also sworn an oath to defend this great nation of ours and a patriot, I am extremely concerned by the state of our democracy today. Our representatives should be able to be held accountable for their actions by the people from which they derive their power. Therefore, I propose the following criteria for the redistricting process in North Carolina. A prohibition on using partisan data. Maps submitted should be able to pass the efficiency gap test or the best available test for gerrymandering that is currently available. Voting precincts should not be divided. I would very much prefer that an independent, nonpartisan commission be appointed to draw our district maps. But should a commission not be appointed, then the governor should be granted veto power over any redistricting bill produced by the General Assembly. All of us are aware of the oath. First, do no harm. Bringing back Dr. Thomas Hoffeller, who failed so miserably in protecting democracy when drawing the 2011 maps, only shows that you desire to continue to undermine our democracy. Representative David Lewis, who was also involved in the failed 2011 maps, and Dr. Heller should not be involved in this important process. I wish I had more time to go into the damage gerrymandering does to both parties and to our great nation. I respectfully request that this body restore democracy to this great state. Thank you.
Travis, you're recognized for a period not to exceed 2 minutes.
My name is Janice Ramquist, resident Raleigh. I've known some of you for decades, and this is a very personal statement. I know you as good people who want to serve your state, and it is very sad to me that so many people distrust you and believe the worst in you. I think that you could change the course of this by adopting better criteria, measurable criteria. There are mathematical equations that can measure whether you are overly partisan in your district, whether they're compact, and whether they meet Voting Rights Act compliance. I thank Representative Lewis and Senator Heiss for increasing the transparency, but it could be improved. Every scrap of information that is used to draw maps should be available to the public. You are doing public's business. There is a rumor that red maps have been drawn already. I hope not, but if they have, I hope you will disclose them now. Redistricting is the foundation of our democracy, and I beseech you to please honor the integrity of the General Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nguyen, you're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
My name is Diana Nguyen. I'm a resident of Wake County. I am part of a large and growing segment of North Carolinians who are unaffiliated voters. However, I believe I speak for many unaffiliated voters, Republican voters, and Democratic voters who are increasingly dismayed by the role of partisan politics in drawing our voting maps. In fact, polling across the nation and specifically in North Carolina reveals that a majority of voters favor a nonpartisan approach to redistricting. To that end, I respectfully request that this committee adopt the following criteria for fair voting maps. First, adopt politically neutral criteria. No addresses of candidates or incumbents should be used, and residents' voting histories and party affiliations should not be considered when defining our voting districts. Second, districts should be compact and contiguous. Voters within a district should not be unnecessarily dispersed, and no voting district should be geographically divided or split by another district. In other words, all portions of a district must connect. Third, avoid dividing counties and municipalities where possible. Fourth, avoid dividing communities of interest where possible. Communities of interest typically have social, cultural, racial, ethnic, or economic interests in common. Finally, and obviously, voting maps should comply with all relevant provisions of the Voting Rights Act. Voters are tired of politics as usual. We want our legislators to stop gerrymandering and end the practice of politicians handpicking their voters. We simply want fair and impartial maps. Thank you for your consideration and the opportunity to speak here today.
Thank you. Let me make a notation. If any of those who have spoken or who will be speaking here shortly want to submit your comments or share, if you have something in writing and you want to share that, put that in the hands of the staff, you can hand those either to the sergeant at arms or to the committee staff up here. Just want to make sure that you knew that opportunity. Also, let me identify the next 5 individuals that will be recognized in line. Lee Mortimer. And for the press, if you're looking at your sheet, number 17 signed up is withdrawn. So the person after Mortimer would be David Williams and Zach Klein, Dallas Woodhouse. So if those individuals would line up, and Ms. Hoey, if you would identify yourself, of course, and for time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Janet Boyd. I live in Orange County, but I'm here today as the co-president of the League of Women Voters of North Carolina. The League, as you probably know, is a 100-year-old nonpartisan political organization that encourages active and informed participation in government. Since 1966, the League of Women Voters of the U.S., our national organization, has advocated for impartial electoral maps with both transparent redistricting processes and, even more importantly, significant opportunities for public participation. Today's public comments are about criteria. Our recommendations focus on 3 primary objectives: transparency, public engagement, and fairness. The League recommends this committee commit to the following: disclose all criteria and assumptions used throughout the process, exclude partisan targets, exclude data on voters' party registration and past voting history, exclude data on incumbents or candidates' addresses, exclude data on race and ethnicity, except where necessary to comply with federal law, meaning the Voting Rights Act. Analyze each set of maps using generally accepted measures of compactness and report the results by district and for the set of maps as a whole. Strictly apply the Stevenson process to define the VRA districts, and, most importantly, make maps available for review and comment by the public in advance of hearings and again before the maps are finalized. We urge this committee to ensure that these criteria are reflected in any maps that have been or will be drawn. Furthermore, we ask that the committee's maps and the criteria used to draw them be promptly publicized without delay from the moment they are created, so that citizens of North Carolina will have full opportunity to consider and respond to them. The League of Women Voters of North Carolina represents thousands of League members across the state, as well as many more thousands of supporters, each of whom is one of your constituents. It is critically important to the League and to every North Carolinian that maps are fair, impartial, and that every North Carolinian's vote counts.
Thank you, Mr. Mortimer. You are recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Lee Mortimer from Durham County. I've been a resident of North Carolina for almost my entire life. I'm a member of North Carolina Common Cause, but I'm speaking on behalf of myself today. The way redistricting has been done for the past decade makes a complete mockery of elections and voting. It didn't start with Republicans in 2011, but abusive redistricting has reached a new and unprecedented level in this most recent cycle. We need to bring legitimacy and fairness to elections and voting, and to make our representatives accountable through competitive elections. The essential first step toward a meaningful redistricting reform is to create a nonpartisan process that excludes all partisan and political considerations and draws districts that are geographically compact and respect legitimate communities of interest. Just today, in Venezuela, we are witnessing the turmoil and disruption that can result when a legislature comes to power through an election process that lacks legitimacy. If we do not bring legitimacy to our elections, I fear something similar could happen here. Thank you.
Next on our list is Mr. Williams. If you identify yourself, you're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
I will. My name is David Williams. I'm from Transylvania County. I represent Transylvania Indivisible, and I stand as the chair of Indivisible's North Carolina's Fair Voting Action Group. But I'm really neither of those things. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a cousin, I'm a friend, I'm an educator. But in January, I chose to put those things aside and to become a resistor. I chose to fight for a country in which facts are true, whether we like them or not, where science is accepted as the pathway to truths, and where truth is valued. I chose to fight for a state where the people's business is conducted publicly, without attempts to avoid meaningful input, for a state that celebrates the value of human diversity and strips no one of its voice, for a state where every voice has a vote and every vote is a voice, for a state government of the people, by representatives of the people, for the welfare of the people. I chose to fight for the future for my son and my grandson. I choose to resist those forces that seek to destroy those things that made this country great. A more perfect union where justice for all under the rule of law is the law, excepting none. A more perfect union with opportunity for all to pursue lives well lived, lives of meaning. A more perfect union giving to all the right to embrace the blessings of liberty. A more perfect union bestowing on all the right to seek happiness and to make that which is good even better. To oppose a hostile force that strips its people of the Constitution's guarantee of equality through a voice embodied in a vote, one voice, one vote. By the deeds of the majority, the tools of democracy, civility, negotiation, compromise, transparency, respect for minority voice, views, and accountability have been derided and eroded to the point they do not exist in public practice. I'm going. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. By the exercise of its power, this group and the legislature have been branded, perhaps unfairly, as racist and as self-seeking. Thank you.
Mr. Klein, you are recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Zachary Klein, residing in North Carolina. I'm going to be brief in my statement. In regards to redistricting, it is in my opinion that counties should be kept as well as possible. Race should not be a determining factor used in redrawing the maps. And it's clear that the courts cannot make up their minds on this matter, and it's best not to use it. Thank you.
Mr. Woodhouse, before we recognize you, let me call the next 5 individuals. Beth, Gerald, Louis Kennard, Amy Porter, Bob Phillips, and Donald Ball. If y'all will line up. Mr. Woodhouse, you're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Dallas Woodhouse. I am the Executive Director of the North Carolina Republican Party, proudly celebrating its 150th anniversary this year. As a party, we certainly support using traditional criteria in the redistricting process, both keeping counties as whole as possible. And we think the Goldilocks standard of using race, we have to use a little bit of race, but not too much race, ought to go away, and that no racial considerations ought to be made. Now, we also think the use or discussion of statewide election data is completely irrelevant, even though it is largely favorable to the North Carolina Republican Party that has won an overwhelming amount of the statewide election races in the past 6 years. We do not elect people on a system of parliament like they do in Europe. It is not the job of this committee to make a political party that lost 76 North Carolina counties in the presidential election competitive because they are uncompetitive in vast swaths, vast areas of the state. Again, 76 counties were won by the presidential candidate in North Carolina, and it is not the job of the committee to make that party competitive when it cannot do so itself in huge areas of the state. One, the minority party in this body has a geographic problem that it has to correct, and that is not the job of this committee to correct. One final note with regards to the 53rd North Carolina House District. As a proud alumnus of Campbell University, I believe that our university has been well represented, and we'd like to wholly keep Campbell University in the 53rd District. Thank you very much.
The lady is recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you for letting us speak today. We appreciate it. I'm Beth Jarrett from Orange County. I'm going to make several points that other folks have made today, but I think it's important for you, the committee members, to hear these over and over again. That the districts that appear after this process demonstrate that one person, one vote is the outcome. They should be equal in population size as much as possible. They should be compact and contiguous. They should make sense. In creating the districts, communities should not be divided. Make efforts to respect the county lines, and if a county must be split, have an honest explanation as to why that was done. In creating the districts, addresses of lawmakers, current and past, party affiliation, voting history of the voters, or any other data other than that which is required by law, should not be used to help a party or a politician in any way. Before the districts are approved, they must be evaluated and demonstrate party competitiveness and no racial bias. The maps should ensure that voters choose their elected officials and not that politicians choose their voters. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Ms. Kennard, you'll be recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for letting me speak. I think the district should, I'm Louise Skinner from Lillington, Harnett County. I think the district should be drawn as geometrically as possible, so we don't have that snaking where they go like this and around. And I like using squares or rectangles, and I understand you can't do that with every district, but as much as possible include, have that geometrical design. I realize that in the past, the Democrats have done the same thing. I mean, maybe not as bad or maybe not as well, but I understand that every time there's a switch in parties, they redistrict to their own political advantage. We can be better. We can do better than that. It should be politically and racially nonpartisan. And before the maps are finalized, I think the public would like to see them, and so they can have some input, and maybe conduct town hall meetings so more of the public can be there to hear their representative, because that's who we go to first. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. You're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak my piece. My name is Amy Porter, and I'm a registered, unaffiliated voter from Graham, North Carolina. I am a lifelong citizen of North Carolina. I'm also a veteran teacher in North Carolina, the North Carolina public school system. My husband, a decorated Vietnam veteran, owns his own business, and we own a small farm in Alamance County. I speak on behalf of all North Carolina residents, Republican, Democrats, and the independent voters like me who have voted for both parties. I want to see the end of political gerrymandering. Districts cannot be drawn intentionally or unduly favoring any political party. We must change this in the form of legislation, a change to the state constitutional form, constitutional. We should form an independent commission to draw district lines. There should be no consideration for voters' party affiliation or voter history in the creation of fair districts. I disagree with Dallas Woodhouse in that statement. Remember that you work for us. Thank you.
Mr. Phillips, you're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Bob Phillips with Common Cause North Carolina. As most of you know, the organization I work for has been pushing for redistricting reform for many years. We're nonpartisan. We've worked with Republicans and Democrats alike on this issue. And we believe that gerrymandering is wrong, regardless of which party does it. At this moment, you have an opportunity to end gerrymandering now if you adopt fair criteria. What does that look like? The place to start is taking politics out of the process. Don't draw districts to favor a political party or an incumbent. That means don't look at past election results or where incumbents live in drawing the maps. The other important rule to follow is abide by the Voting Rights Act. Stop using race to gerrymander. Don't compact or divide minority communities to weaken their voting strength. Follow those rules, and you'll get maps that are more compact, contiguous, and keeping communities of interest together. You'll also get more districts that are competitive, something we need in North Carolina, so we the people can hold you, our elected officials, more accountable. Finally, the map-making process needs to be more open and transparent, no more hired partisan guns in back rooms committing gerrymandering. Ideally, maps should be drawn by an independent entity, not the lawmakers. Now, everything I've mentioned, everything is found in House Bill 200, a bipartisan piece of legislation filed this year that has not been considered. The fact is, a majority of you, this committee, has either voted for or sponsored legislation that would provide the criteria I've just outlined. Let me say that again. Most of you in this room have supported nonpartisan redistricting, and you've done it since the shift of power in 2011. There are a lot of you. I can look out and I know most of you. A lot of you, both sides of the aisle, who remember and know what it was like to be on the wrong side of gerrymandering. You didn't like it, and that's why you supported reform. I just ask you, support reform, support fair criteria in gerrymandering now.
Before we call the next individual, let me call the the final 6 individuals, if you would line up, that we have on our list. Greg Flynn, James Wood, Nan Fulcher, Siobhan Millen, Laura Hawley, Garrett Brenner. We'll line up. Mr. Wall, you are recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Donald Meyer, and I'm a citizen of Wake County. I come before this honorable body today to voice my concern for fair electric districts. You see, I served this state and the country for a total of 67 years, 32 years in North Carolina Army National Guard, and 35 years as a state employee, deploying to Iraq with the 3rd PCT to win the hearts and minds of the citizens there, because their government had failed them. I believe in government to be responsible to its citizens. You have the power to win the hearts and minds of our citizens of North Carolina by voting and approving fair districts, whereby all people of North Carolina will be represented equally and fairly. Thank you.
Mr. Flynn, you are recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you. I am Greg Flynn, a Wake County voter for the past... I'm still Greg Flynn. A Wake County voter, and for the past 6 years, I've been under assault from redistricting, which has had to be fought off on the battlefields of federal court. Even my precinct has 2 congressional districts in it. In addition to United States and state redistricting struck by the courts, my county commission and school board districts have been successfully challenged in federal court. It was absurd as a plaintiff to have to drive up to Richmond, Virginia to defend voting rights here in Wake County, North Carolina. These districts were neither fair nor legal. Please don't repeat this debacle. Please create compact districts that don't resemble crime scene blood splatters. Please create districts that represent and engage all voters, Republican, Democratic, unaffiliated, and even libertarians. There's more to life than the epic and chaotic struggle between the 2 main parties. The growing ranks of unaffiliated voters, which will soon eclipse one of the parties, signals dissatisfaction with the current political scheme and a desire to end the chaos. Please, let us see the maps you likely have created already so we can get down to business and not waste another 6 years. And finally, I ask that the Senate Chair recuse himself until the State Board of Elections concludes the investigation of his campaign finances. Thank you.
Mr. Wood, you're recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you. James Wood from Raleigh. So the objective here is to draw fair legislative districts. I feel like I could get down with a pencil and a paper and draw pretty decent districts in about 5 minutes. So what I'm wondering is why an intervention of the United States Supreme Court is necessary for this General Assembly to draw fair legislative districts. In any classroom or workplace, if you turn something in late, 5 days late, you know exactly what's going to happen to you. You get an F or you get fired. But more than 5 years late, forget about it. You know, maybe I could understand that it was an honest mistake. If the General Assembly had acknowledged the problem and worked expediently to remedy it the first time these districts were found unconstitutional in court. But I have watched you fight justice tooth and nail. Others have no doubt watched you too. What kind of impression do you think you're making to young people? I can give you a hint that it's not too good. We are done with your pettiness, and in the not-so-distant future, when we're up there running the show, things are going to be different around here. Thank you.
Ms. Fulcher, you are recognized for a time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Nan Fulcher, and I'm from Hillsborough. In creating the 2011 legislative districts for the state of North Carolina, Representative Lewis, in his role as House Redistricting Committee Chair, failed to uphold his oath of office to support the Constitution of the state of North Carolina and the Constitution of the United States. However, there is no remedy for this failure. In the absence of a formal remedy, I respectfully ask Representative Lewis to step down from the current redistricting committee. Your resignation would acknowledge the plight of all of the residents living in the 28 illegal districts who have not been able to participate in democracy since 2011. From our perspective, the perspective of we the people, an individual right with no remedy is no right at all. Please show your compassion for the citizens of North Carolina. By choosing to step down, you will show you value justice. You will give a sense of remedy to those that deserve it, and you will restore their faith in you as a legislator and your commitment to uphold the Constitution. Thank you.
Ms. Miller, before I recognize you, we had two additional people that we had called, Laura Hawley and Garrett Brenner. Are those individuals here? Okay, so you are who you're, okay. I'll make sure to call you then. Ms. Millen, you're recognized for time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Siobhan Millen. Thank you for allowing me to comment this morning. I'm impressed by your statements last week at this committee hearing and your attorney, Mr. Strack's argument at the federal court that this committee intends to seek plentiful public input into its redistricting efforts. Indeed, the 3-judge panel's order last week lauded your commendable goal of obtaining and considering public input and engaging in robust debate and discussion. My suggestion would be that you add one more criteria to the standard ones that many have already suggested this morning. To be clear, these standard criteria are compactness, contiguity, respect for political subdivisions, disregard of the party registration of voters, disregard of the addresses of the incumbent representative, avoidance of petty double bunking of the minority party, compliance with one-man, one-vote principle, minimizing excessive efficiency gaps within legislative districts, and compliance with the Voting Rights Act. The additional criteria which I suggest is that you keep in mind that North Carolina currently has 2.6 million registered Democrats, 2 million registered Republicans, and 2 million unaffiliated voters. The districts you create should elect senators and House members roughly in proportion to those numbers. The current overwhelming Republican majority in both chambers suggests that something has gone seriously awry in North Carolina. As evidence of this atrophied democracy, in the 2016 election, nearly half of the contest for the North Carolina House and Senate had only one major party candidate on the ballot. Our General Assembly should reflect our electorate, and for this to happen, we need competitive districts. But as Judge Eagles and Judge Wynn noted last week in Greensboro, this committee seems not to take seriously its job of drawing more constitutional districts. In an ominous sign made public in this very room last week, Representative Lewis disclosed that the Joint Committee intends to use again the services of Dr. Tom Hoffler in crafting, with his customary surgical precision, new districts for the General Assembly. This is of concern because Tom Hoffler is a paid consultant for the Republican National Committee, who was described by the Atlantic magazine in 2012 as a gimlet-eyed, semi-clandestine political operative. So with the federal court overseeing this process, this committee should make all meetings with Dr. Hoffler transparent to the public. Thank you.
Ms. Hall, you're recognized for time not to exceed 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Laura. I'm from Apex, Wake County.
Could you give us your last name as well, please?
Holly.
Thank you.
While I am affiliated with various organizations, including the Democrat Party, currently as a precinct chair, here as a nonpartisan fan of well-functioning democracy, representing myself and all NC residents, Ds, Rs, and Us, to truly represent all of us and be responsive to all of the voter constituencies. Based upon objective, comprehensive, published data from multiple sources, maps that were so extremely gerrymandered, tweaked by advanced software modeling capabilities, every fact-based indication underscores that my beloved adopted state of North Carolina functionally or empirically both murdered democracy in 2011. Let's work collaboratively to revive it, starting with implementing fair mapping mandates that are strictly honored in practice, such as nonpartisan process for drawing new maps, written explicit protocols for transparency before, during, and after the map drawing process to allow for public and media openness. As a subnote to that, for input before maps are drawn, I'd ask that all reference materials are handed out to the larger committee body, that these documents are also provided to the media and public at least 48 hours in advance of meetings such as today's. I'd further like to see mechanisms, if not already existing, put in place for public input before, during, and after each map drawing, both online and in person. Thank you.
Is Garrett Brenner here and wishing to speak? Okay, having not, that is the last individual on our list, and the public hearing portion of this committee meeting is officially closed. Before we close our meeting otherwise, let me make a couple of notations. One, as you see on the screen, and for those who are listening in, the comment opportunities for public input. There are opportunities to send in written comments, as well as submissions online. There's an opportunity for that, as well as General Assembly's website, so I would take note of that. Again, if you had any written comments, for those of you who made presentations today during the public comment period, if you want to hand those, if you would like to hand those to the any of the sergeant at arms or the staff up here, please feel free to do that. The criteria for usage of the terminal will be posted on the committee's website as well. That was the information that was passed out earlier today. Questions from members of the committee? Yes, sir. Representative Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. Will there be a schedule for remote hearings, public hearings? And I would like to add that if that's the case, first of all, could I get an answer to that particular question first, and I have a follow-up question or statement?
Chairman Lewis is recognized.
Thank you for the question, Representative Moore. Again, this is David Lewis from Harnett County. The intent is to indeed publish a schedule. It largely depends on when we can get the maps drawn. As you've heard today, one of the things that the public expects to be able to see the maps in order to comment on them. Our goal is to be able to conduct and receive public input on August 22nd or August the 23rd. We will have a firmer date after the criteria is adopted by this committee next week and the process of drawing the maps can begin.
Okay, follow up, and let me just say, I didn't say in front of this, Rodney Moore, House District 99 for the record. And secondly, when we have the schedule for these remote hearings or public hearings, I would request for the record that you would have a member of the majority and the minority party there. I know in the past when we've done them before, you've had certain members in those particular areas to kind of preside over the meeting. I would ask that you would have at least one member of the minority party there as well to represent that interest or represent that particular voice.
That's what we did.
Okay. Gentleman's recognized.
Representative Moore, I thank you for that suggestion. I would point out that that was indeed our practice in 2011, and the desire of the Speaker and the President Pro Tem for the members to attend is one of the reasons that we've been called back when we have. So as soon as we have an idea that we'll have a map to show and the public will have time to look at it, we will announce a series of remote sites across the state and here in Raleigh, of course, and we will encourage members of both parties to either attend them here in Raleigh or to go on site on the remote sites.
Representative Michaud.
Yeah, Representative Michaud from Durham County. A couple of questions. When do you plan to have the criteria drawn so that we can sit down and start talking maps?
Chair Lewis, I'll recognize him for that.
Thank you for the question, Representative Michaud. The intent is for this committee to meet next Thursday and adopt the criteria. We have received criteria today from members of the public. There are also members of this committee that have sent forward criteria. We anticipate continuing to receive that through next week, and then when we meet on Thursday, we will allow all the criteria to be disclosed and discussed and adopted, and only after this committee has once this committee has adopted it, I will instruct the map drawer to begin using that criteria to draw a map.
Representative Michaud.
Yeah, follow up, Representative Michaud again. Chairman Lewis, I keep trying to emphasize it, but you have shown us some maps here today, several of them, showing the county groupings. Can you assure this body right now that no redistricting maps have yet been drawn?
Thank you for the question. I can assure this body that none has been drawn at my direction and that I have direct knowledge of. The only map I'm aware of was submitted by an independent group and presented to this committee last week.
Follow up. Yeah, just to be clear, I'm talking about anything that any chairman or members of the Republican Party or anybody, no map has yet been drawn that should be handed out here. I mean, people are concerned about the fact, they think you've already drawn the maps. I want to make sure, coming from you, that you have not yet drawn maps.
Thank you for the question. I have not yet drawn maps, nor have I directed that maps be drawn, nor am I aware of any other entity operating in conjunction with the leadership that has drawn maps.
Further questions? If not, the next, Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was on criteria. Will we be adopting criteria as a joint committee, or will the House members have a chance to adopt criteria for the House, and the senators will have to adopt criteria for the Senate maps?
Let me allow Senator, Chairman Rice to address that.
Thank you. It is our intent to have joint criteria. Obviously, it would be the committee's choice of recommendation, what it approved for its criteria, but it is our intent to have the same criteria established for each map.
Further questions of committee members at this time? If not, our next meeting will be next Thursday, August the 10th at 10 a.m. here in room 643. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we're